PARSHA Yisro, Tov Shen Vav. This week we bring the shir back to the United States. This year we were sure that we would be able to continue the shiurim from Eretz Yisrael, and we wouldn't have to come back, and everybody would come join us there. But unfortunately, another week in Galus. Parshas Yisro, famous called Shabbos Kabbalas HaTorah. The past couple of years we've spoken about Kabbalas HaTorah. This year we're going to move more back to the beginning of the Parsha. We're going to discuss the inyan of Yisro. Before we begin, I just want to mention that this week's shir is Ilu Nishmas, the father of the founder of this shir, father of Yosef Motorpearl, Rav Menachem Mendel Motorpearl, who was nifter this week, and we wish a nechama to Yosef and his entire family. The pasuk says at the beginning of the parsha, "Vayishma Yisro chayhen midyon chaysein Moshe, eis kol asher asa Hashem leMoshe uYisrael amoy." Yisro heard everything that was done for Klal Yisrael. Ki hoitzi Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Klal Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. So it says Vayishma Yisro. Vayishma means he heard. What did Yisro hear? So Rashi answers that question. Rashi brings the Mechilta, and the Mechilta elaborates and says, what did Yisro hear? What really got Yisro, says Rashi, is the tremendous things that happened, Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes Amalek. These two things. That's what Yisro heard. Vayishma Yisro heard Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes Amalek. The Mefarshim explain that the kavanah of this medrash is essentially to tell us about one word of the question. Rashi has a question, Ma Shmu'a Shoma Uba. What did he hear and that made Yisro come to Klal Yisrael? So the Mefarshim explain that this medrash is really focusing in on the word of Uba. What made Yisro actually pick himself up and come to Klal Yisrael? What prompted Yisro to actually act? Because the pasuk tells us what he heard, right? The pasuk tells us, we learned from we said on the pasuk that Yisro heard about Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes Amalek. So really, why couldn't Yisro just be happy about it? He heard, oh wow, wonderful things. Kriyas Yamsuf, wow, unbelievable. Milchemes Amalek, tremendous miracles also. Why couldn't Yisro just be happy about it from home? Be happy about it. The focus here is what prompted Yisro to actually do something about it. And because he was happy, to come to Klal Yisrael. And the second question, the second thing we need to focus in on here is why would Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes Amalek actually make Yisro pick up and come? You can wonder why, but why these two things? What was special about these two things that made Yisro actually come to Klal Yisrael? So the Nesivos Shalom brings down from the Divrei Shemot, and he says like this, what really got the attention of Yisro was the fact, when we say Kriyas Yamsuf and Milchemes Amalek, those two things, he said what really got Yisro's attention was the fact that after Kriyas Yamsuf, there could still be a Milchemes Amalek, which is an amazing thing. Kriyas Yamsuf, we know the entire world, it was the top news in the entire world. Shamu Amim Yirgazun, we say in Oz Yoshir, Chilachaz Yoshrei Palashes. People couldn't believe what was happening. Kriyas Yamsuf was the biggest piece of news ever. And people were just blown away by it. And what happened? And after all of that, Amalek could still come and have such kfirah, still deny HaKadosh Baruch Hu, still come and fight with Klal Yisrael. So Yisro said, that's unbelievable. The fact that there could be a Kriyas Yamsuf and still after Kriyas Yamsuf, they have a Milchemes Amalek. So you know what? Yisro was afraid that if he sat around and did nothing, and he just listened, and he was just happy, if he sat around and did nothing, the same might happen to him. Yisro heard about Kriyas Yamsuf, and Yisro was extremely influenced by Kriyas Yamsuf. And he said, well, if it could happen to Amalek, why can't it happen to me? And so Yisro said, well, if it could happen to them, and it might happen to me, then I have to pick myself up when they have to come. Because nothing is guaranteed. So Rashi brings from the Mechilta that when the Pasuk tells us, like this in the Parsha, the Pasuk tells us, Ato Yodati Ki Godol Hashem Mikol Alekim. Yisro said, now I know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bigger than any other God. That's what Yisro said. You know what the Pasuk is telling us, says the Mechilta? It is telling us that Yisro is saying, Ata Yadati. Now I know. In other words, I knew something before, but there's something that clicked right now. Something extra. Now I really know. Ata Yadati. I knew before. I knew something. But now, Ata, something really clicked for me. Now I know much better. And the Medrash tells us that Yisro had a very chashuv position. We know Yisro was like a priest where he lived. And Yisro, before then, had already asked for his early retirement plan. Because Yisro heard what was going on, Yisro heard about all these things. He had already asked for early retirement. He wanted to leave his position. But now, when he heard Ati Yadati, now he finalized his decision. And Dr. Nesivos Shalom, a very beautiful thought in how this process worked. He says like this: there are two types of emunah, and we discuss emunah. We discuss it many different times and many different angles of emunah. And this is another angle that's a very, very beautiful thing to hear. He says like this: one type of emunah is where one, through their own intellect and through things that you hear, you come to the conclusion that there is a Borei Olam, there is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who created the world, and He runs the world, but you came to this decision from seeing tremendous miracles, from seeing the Nisim, from seeing all the things that go on, and from your own intellectual deduction, you decide and you realize that there must be HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This type of emunah, says in Nesivos Shalom, doesn't really do it. It doesn't hammer it home. This type of emunah is not the type of emunah that's everlasting. And you know why? It's for a very, very simple reason. Because if emunah is based on your own intellect and your own deduction, if that's what your emunah is based on, it's possible that tomorrow you'll intellectually come to a different decision. In other words, you worked everything out in your mind, and something might look to you different, something might look different the next day, so you're going to come to a different decision. You're going to make an intellectual decision, and you have a conclusion to the contrary, and you go back to being a kaifer. Go right back to kfirah. And that's what happens from that type of emunah. That's an emunah of what, says the Nesivos Shalom, that's the emunah of a goy that has just thought a little bit, and he's a little bit of an intellectual, so a goy comes to that kind of emunah. That's the decision that he comes to. Then, says the Nesivos Shalom, there's the emunah of a Yehudi. There's the emunah of a Yid. The emunah of a Jew. And how does that differ? That is a clear emunah. It's another step of emunah. Ani mamin be'emunah what? Be'emunah shalema. And nothing to do with the video that we all watched this week about Ani Mamin. I know everybody's thinking of those. This is one of the Ani Mamins, the Shloisha So Ikrim, not the Ani Mamins you heard this week in the speak. Ani Mamin be'emunah shalema. That's a complete emunah. That no thought, nothing that you think of, and nothing you will ever think of could change the emunah that you have. And we know that even after Kriyas Yamsuf, you know that after Kriyas Yamsuf, and it says about Kriyas Yamsuf, that a shifcha, a maidservant by the Yamsuf, saw more than Nevi'im ever saw in their lives. And it was such a great exposure of emunah, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and everything. But you know what? You know what happened after that? There was still, and we know over there by Yaminu B'Hashem, over Moshe Avdoi, and still after that, in this week's Parsha, Hashem still told us by Kabbalah Satoira, Anoichi Hashem Alekecha. We still have to hammer home the emunah, Anoichi Hashem Alekecha, and that is the mitzvah of emunah was greater than the emunah of something that they saw by Kriyas Yamsuf. Hashem still had to tell us Anochi Hashem Alekecha. There's a mitzvah of emunah, because we need to believe not because of something that we heard or we saw. We heard Kriyas Yamsuf, we saw Kriyas Yamsuf. No, your emunah can't be based just on that, because like we said, that could turn around the next day when you see something which in your mind seems to the contrary. The Torah tells us, Anochi Hashem Alekecha, in this week's Parsha, and that's the next level of emunah. Anochi Hashem Alekecha, what? Whether you feel it at that moment or not. Even when sometimes it's a bit cloudy out there, and there are times, and every person has it in their lives, there are times that our emunah is tested. It seems that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, maybe He's not, you think He's not with you. And you think He's not around you. And you think He's not around Klal Yisrael. Or He's not around your family. But our emunah has to be clear and to understand that everything that happens in life, Anochi Hashem Alekecha, more than that level of emunah from just seeing something. And says in Nesivos Shalom, this is what Yisro meant. When Yisro said, Ata Yadati, now I know. In other words, now it's a clear emunah. Before Yadati, I had emunah from seeing things, but Ata Yadati, now I have this clear emunah. When Yisro saw that after Kriyas Yamsuf, Amalek could still come and fight Klal Yisrael, Yisro understood that all the seeing and all the hearing in the world does not solidify one's emunah. And the only eitzah, mashmua shama uba. The only eitzah was, I can't do this from far anymore. I have to come and join the people who have real emunah. I have to come and join Klal Yisrael to attain their level of emunah. I need the emunah of no questions, of no doubt. Because that's what it says in the Torah. The Torah tells us something, and that is the way it is. And it's a yisod that we really need to know when we perform all mitzvahs. And the Nesivos Shalom says something again, very interesting here. There are many things in the Torah which your own intellect would tell you that you understand to do that, maybe even without the Torah. The Torah tells us in this week's Parsha, Lo Sirtzach, a person shouldn't murder. Lo Signoi, a person shouldn't steal. The average person, from your own intellect, you understand that if something belongs to someone else, if you didn't buy it, if it's in someone else's house, you don't go and take it. If somebody else has a life, somebody's living, no thing gives you a right to murder somebody for any reason. So these are things that we could think that we have our own, in our own mind, our own intellect would tell us if we had to write a Torah, if we had to write bylaws, if we had to write laws, these are probably some of the things that any one of us would think of. So you know what we're saying over here? That the reason we have to know, that the reason we follow the mitzvahs of the Torah, and the reason we follow the commandments of Hashem, and what Hashem wants for us, is not because it's something which in our mind makes sense. The reason we follow and that we're mekayim the mitzvahs of Hashem is because Hashem wants us to. And that's a lesson in this week's Parsha. The lesson is, it's not just enough to have that intellectual level of emunah. We need to have the emunah where we believe clearly, where we know that we have a clear emunah despite what we see sometimes. And we have the emunah, and we know that the reason we listen to the ideas and the mitzvahs of the Torah is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said so. And that's something that Yisro taught us in this week's Parsha. That it's not enough to just be happy saying, yeah, I believe. Yeah, what do you believe exactly? Do you really believe? Do you really believe when it's cloudy outside? Do you really believe when you're challenged? Well, the emunah of a yid, even when it's challenging, we have to teach that to ourselves. We have to train ourselves. It's not something that comes magically. We need to train ourselves and teach ourselves every day. As we grow in life, we need to grow in emunah also. And that is what Yisro was saying. Yisro was saying, this emunah is not enough for me. It doesn't make any sense because look, there was Kriyas Yamsuf. The whole world was shaking from Kriyas Yamsuf in last week's Parsha. And here it comes to the end of the Parsha last week, and Amalek kofer the whole thing. That can happen to anybody. Don't kid yourselves. It can happen to every one of us. No, we have to go to the next level of emunah. Ma shmoa shama uba. He got up and he proactively, he went and he did something about it, and he came to join Klal Yisrael.